Sweden, which is considered one of the least religious countries on the planet, has taken it upon itself to allow and justify the burning of the Quran outside of its Turkish embassy.
My name is Armin Navabi. This is the Secular Jihadists. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're going to be reviewing this YouTube channel, Smile to Jannah, which is an Islamic channel. This is a very popular YouTube channel.
Half of Americans want it to become illegal to burn their flag.
This is a fallacy here. I think he's doing a whataboutism, right? Half of America say it should be illegal to burn the US flag. Well, half of them don't. And America doesn't have that law. Thank the devil. America is ahead of the rest of the civilized world when it comes to free speech. Half of Americans are wrong.
Germany's made it illegal to even burn the EU flag, which isn't even a country, mate.
Yeah, well, the German law be dumb. The Germany should not do that. So, yeah, we disagree with that as well. What about it? Doesn't matter. Burning flags should only be illegal if it's causing safety hazards. If it's a public safety issue. You could piss on it instead. That would be safer and more disrespectful. So, yeah, go for it. Free speech and all.
And France doesn't even want you to distribute pictures of their burnt flag, let alone burning the flag.
I don't know if that's true, but if it is true, because I can't read French, but let's assume it's true, then that's stupid. French law be stupid. What do you think? We're going to endorse that?
All of this being said, Sweden, which is considered one of the least religious countries on the planet, has taken it upon itself to allow and justify the burning of the Quran outside of its Turkish embassy.
Sweden's justifying it or just allowing it? Has the country justified it or just allowed it? Yeah, they're allowing it. They're not justifying it because free speech and all. So what should Sweden do? Outside of Turkish embassy means in public space. I'm talking about a public space. So should Sweden limit freedom of speech in public spaces? So Sweden should not allow burning of the Quran because France doesn't allow the burning of its flag? So Sweden has to look upon Germany and France not allowing flag burning, and we're like, okay, given that France and Germany don't allow flag burning, and half of Americans don't believe that flag burning should not be allowed, we should not allow Quran burning? How does that follow? What does that got to do with this? Some other countries' bad laws is an excuse for you to also introduce bad laws limiting free speech? I guess he went and looked and he couldn't find any Swedish laws to show that Sweden was being a hypocrite, so he had to go like, oh, France, Germany, half of Americans, even though no American laws. But yeah, but no Swedish laws. How come no Swedish laws are being mentioned? Could he not found any Swedish laws? Did he not find any Swedish laws that limits free speech? So he had to go and find other countries that are not Sweden to actually point to hypocrisy. What does that got to do with Sweden? They're not being hypocrites. Totally not cherry picking laws here. For people who don't understand, this guy is burning the Quran and I burn the Quran, but that guy's views do not represent my views. If you actually go watch the video where I burn the Quran, I defend Muslims. That guy is an anti-Muslim bigot. There's different motivations here. To be fair, I have moved back on burning because I'm worried about the safety issues. Somebody might burn their house down or something like that. I say it's easier, more environmentally friendly, more safe, and more convenient, and also less costly for you to just tear it apart or spit on it or even piss on it if you want. Like, if you piss on it, you can't show that on YouTube, on social media. So just spit on it. Just spit on the Quran. It's easier. It's more disrespectful. No safety hazard. No environmental issues. That's the only reason I am concerned with burning, because I'm concerned that you guys might do something stupid and burn the whole house down.
Yes, indeed. All of this drama is taking place in Sweden. And not only this, the burn of the Quran has been given police protection.
They get police protection because they're doing something that is not illegal and there's a threat that somebody might want to harm them. Even if you don't endorse what they're doing, even if they're doing something is immoral, if they're not doing something illegal and there's a threat to their safety, the police is responsible to protect them. What is your problem with that? Do you think that the police should stop protecting its citizens if they're doing something that is legal but immoral? That's not how the law works. That's not how police works. They're supposed to get the protection.
I mean, it's not like the country's got a gang problem or a rise in gun crime. Oh, wait, it does.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Right.
Oh,
One
no.
second. One second.
Oh,
One
no.
second.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're saying there are other problems in Sweden. So I'm assuming the police is not doing anything about that? Is that what you're just saying? Swedish police is just watching that? Are they just standing by and not responding to this? Is that what's happening? Because just because there are other things that requires the attention of Swedish police, it doesn't mean that they should ignore other problems. Let's say you call the police, hey, my boyfriend is hitting me. Like, I'm sorry, ma'am, but there are shootings in other places of Sweden. So I guess that's important. So we're not going to send anybody. Is you being beaten up by your boyfriend as important as shootings going up in Sweden? No. So we're not going to send anybody. The police is not going to be just only sending forces only to highest priority issues in the country. When there's the crime or the potential of something happening, it's the responsibility of police to send somebody for protection. That's how it works. They don't only send their forces in the highest priority cases. They have to always be there. People with certain ideologies, I don't know which one. Do you guys know which one I'm talking about? People with certain ideologies are likely to want to do something to people who are publicly burning the Quran. I don't know. I wonder which ideology that is. I think yeah, I don't remember. Yeah, if you guys could help me out here, let me know. But certain people are likely to want to attack these people, and the police knows this. So there's a credible threat to their safety, so they have to be there. Some Shintos, yes, it's Shintos. It's the Shintos that we need to be worried about. It's the Shintos that are the concern, the safety threat. Watch out for those Shintos.
I mean, the country is very advanced in terms of LGBT. It's one of the most inclusive countries, mate, yeah? And in terms of, sidelining religion, so they're very intelligent people. I'm sure they can see through all this. I don't think so, because if you are really and truly intelligent, you would know that Turkey holds the key for Sweden joining NATO. And Turkey hasn't been so forthcoming.
Turkey is such a problematic part of NATO because their Islamic and authoritarian values are used as a way to make other NATO countries bend the knee to inferior values of an Islamic country. Sweden grants permission to burn the Quran outside Turkish embassy as Erdogan continues to block countries' NATO bid. Erdogan is continuing to block countries' NATO bid more because of Kurdish activists that Sweden is not handing over to Turkey, which is still problematic because Turkey's justice system is not the best. Like the due process standards there are less than ideal. So I can see why Sweden would have an issue sending over Kurdish activists to Turkey because the standards of what is considered a terrorist instead of an activist in Turkey is not as good as what we have in many European countries. Unfortunately, Turkey can block Sweden joining NATO. And this is such a problem because at one side, you have Swedish people thinking we shouldn't drop our values to Turkey level standards. And the answer to Turkey should be an absolute no. But at the same time, it's so essential for Sweden to join NATO. You can see how countries where people appeal to Islam for their values and standards is causing such a security issue for the entirety of the planet. So I don't know if this is one thing that you want to brag about. If this contributes to Turkey not allowing Sweden into NATO, you're bragging about a country holding hostage the security of the citizens of Sweden over pieces of paper. That shows where Islamic priorities are. Sweden wants to join NATO to protect the lives of its citizens. And you want to block that over a few pieces of paper because a few pieces of paper takes priority over people's lives. And you're bragging about this. This shows how liberal values are superior to Islamic values. Thank you for showing that to us. Turkey being part of NATO is problematic because of stuff like this, but Turkey's membership in NATO is so important because of geographic reasons, because geopolitically Turkey is so essential to NATO. So as problematic as it is for Turkey to be part of NATO, the benefits of it being part of NATO far outweighs the costs. Their access to the Mediterranean and the Black Sea, it just makes them such an essential part of NATO.
You can either consider that Sweden has thrown a tantrum at Turkey, or you can consider it a strategy to use the situation to somehow leverage Turkey.
Sweden to leverage Turkey. These are individuals in Sweden. Why can't these people differentiate between individuals within a country taking an action and the country's government having certain policies? The Swedish government is not burning Qurans. These are individuals choosing to burn the Quran in Sweden, and Sweden just not stopping them because it's a free country. It's not an endorsement of their action. Is it Sweden or one guy? It's not Sweden that is burning the Quran. It's one guy. It's a dude. It's a Swedish person. Do you know the difference?
And not only this, the Prime Minister of this very advanced country has given the same dreary, boring, worn out response of, hey, it's freedom of speech.
Well, I'm sorry, but it is. What do you want him to do? Do you want the Prime Minister to be like, okay, given that you are so bored about us talking about freedom of speech, we are going to violate our laws. I was going to tell you that in this country we have freedom of expression, but I'm sorry, I didn't consider the fact that you were so bored by it. So, in the interest of not boring you again, we are going to violate our own country's laws and go arrest the mofo. I'm so sorry, I didn't know that you were so bored by this. The tweet says, freedom of expression is a fundamental part of democracy, but what is legal is not necessarily appropriate. Look, they're saying we don't endorse this. They're saying that we're not even endorsing this. Burning books that are holy to many is deeply disrespectful act. Oh my God, not only they're not endorsing it, they're actually denouncing it. It's not Sweden. It's one Swedish guy. It continues, I want to express my sympathy for all Muslims who are offended by what has happened in Stockholm today. Jesus Christ, what else do you want him to do? You only underline the red part, which you are, I'm so sorry, bored by, but you're ignoring the rest. The guy is saying, hey, we don't endorse this. This is not the policy of the government. What do you want them to do? Do you want them to violate their laws? Do you want them to ignore the freedom of expression they have in Sweden? What do you want them to do? I think these people don't understand that these countries are incapable of doing that. If the prime minister were like, okay, fine, arrest the guy, they were like, I'm sorry, but you can't. You don't actually have that power. So even if the prime minister wanted to, they are incapable of arresting the guy because the prime minister is not above the law. So they don't have any leverage. They are not using this guy to burn the Quran to pressure Turkey to doing something that Sweden wants.
The same dreary, boring, worn out response of, hey, it's freedom of speech.
Maybe it's not worn out enough given that you still don't understand it. Maybe they need to tell you even more. The reason why I'm giving you the same answer because the answer is the same thing. They can't make up an answer because you are tired of hearing it. Maybe if you understood it, they wouldn't have to repeat it a million times.
It's freedom of speech.
It's not a joke. It's a serious answer. That's what it is. Why would you do badam-tam? Why would you do that? They weren't joking. That's not a joke. That's the answer.
Well, I'm sure this ignoramus can tell the difference between free speech and hate speech. And if he can't, he shouldn't be in charge of a shopping trolley, let alone a country, mate.
Lol.
There's no difference. One is a subcategory of another. Free speech includes speech that is hate speech. So maybe you don't understand. Maybe that's why people need to keep repeating these things to you. Free speech includes all forms of speech, including speech you don't like, unless there are direct threats of violence, defamation, or a scam. But the rest of it is free, including speech that is hateful and speech that you don't like. The whole point of free speech laws is to protect the expression of speech that is unpopular, because speech that is popular would not require protection. You wouldn't need free speech laws if the speech was popular, because nobody would be attacking it. The unpopularity of the speech is the reason why we kind of have free speech laws.
Comes to insulting a Jewish personality like Anne Frank, it was considered unacceptable and the official was suspended. There was no discussion of free speech.
Sweden Democrats suspend official for insulting comments about Anne Frank. Suspend official. That is not a violation of someone's free speech. This is why people have to keep explaining free speech to you guys. This is why it's worn out, because it doesn't get through to you guys. You guys don't seem to understand what free speech is. Was what the officials said deemed illegal? Were they charged a fine? Were they put into prison? Free speech doesn't mean that when you say something, you are free from the consequences of saying that. It just means the government is not going to arrest you, it's not going to torture you, it's not going to execute you, it's not going to fine you, and it's not going to withhold protection from you. That's what free speech means. It doesn't mean that you're going to keep your job. It's not going to mean that you're going to keep your platform. It doesn't mean that you're going to keep getting invited to everywhere. It's not going to mean that you're going to hold your position. It's not going to mean that you're not going to be criticized, mocked. It doesn't mean any of that. These are consequences of your expression. These consequences doesn't mean your free speech has been violated. The only consequences that means your free speech has been violated is when the government comes and penalizes you with jail, fines, torture, execution, or withholding protection. The United States has the strongest free speech laws in the world, as far as I know. If you go to your office and start swearing at your boss and they fire you, you can't be like, hey, what happened to my free speech? Your boss is not the government. You haven't been fined. You haven't been arrested. It's just the consequences of you swearing at your boss. It's a private company. They should be able to fire you. The same guy, after being suspended, they could continue saying these things that they said. They could go into the park and just tell people about their weird views about whatever got them into about Anne Frank. They could continue saying that. But free speech does not mean that you have a right to your position. Does not mean you have a right to a platform. It just means you are free to say those things.
And if that's not all, the Jewish folks are getting a special investigator to help them fit in better into the country, mate. And good on them, I say. But in that investigation, I don't think they're gonna include burning the Jewish holy book to facilitate all this, mate. That's only reserved for the Muslims. Yeah?
That should be allowed as well. What do you guys don't get? If you burn the Jewish holy book, maybe you get consequences from your company, social media, your friends, your colleagues. That is to be expected. Some of it is right, some of it is wrong, depending on what you did. But legally, that should also be allowed. That should be allowed. That's what free speech is. You should be allowed. This is the example that he wants to go with because he wants to show that the Jewish people are in power. If it's legal to burn a Quran in a country, it's also legal to burn a Jewish holy book.
Burning the Jewish holy book to facilitate all this, mate. That's only reserved for the Muslims. Yeah?
No, the legality is not reserved for the Muslims. The legality of it is reserved for both burning the Quran and Jewish holy books.
And look at my second example. Because Sweden has closed 17 Islamic schools because they're unhappy with what's being taught. No freedom of speech for the Islamic schools there, mate. Yeah?
Is it because they're Islamic? The article says Swedish authorities have closed 17 private Islamic schools since 2019, claiming they are unfit to conduct school activities, but critics say it's part of anti-Islamic rhetoric. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm going to claim ignorance here. It's possible that these schools were shut not just because they were Islamic. I do think all the religious schools should be shut. But if there's a double standard, I would agree with you. If Islamic schools are being shut and Catholic schools are not being shut, then there's a double standard here and there's a bias. But it's possible here that these schools are shut not just because they're Islamic, but because they're not meeting the standards. I would say that if these Islamic schools are shut because they're not meeting the standards of what a school is supposed to do, then good on them, shut them down. If it's only because they're Islamic, then I would have only supported it if it was the same standard with other religious schools as well. But if there's a bias over Islamic schools but not other religious schools, then I would condemn it. I would guess that your audience is going to just assume that it's only because they're Islamic and there's a bias there without knowing if that's actually the case, without actually having all the facts. Fine to just say you don't know. But it just fits your narrative, so why not just run with the idea that it's because they're Islamic? D is saying in the live chat, somewhere segregating the kids. That's not allowed in Sweden. That doesn't meet a healthy school environment. If there's segregation between boys and girls, that's not a healthy school environment. That doesn't meet the country standards. If other religious schools are not doing that and the Islamic schools are, then it wouldn't be because they're just Islamic. It's just because they're not meeting the standards of a healthy school environment.
No freedom of speech for the Islamic schools there, mate, yeah?
You don't understand freedom of speech. Freedom of speech does not mean that you have the right to expose my child to teachings that are harmful to my child. Maybe if you want to criticize something, first understand what you're criticizing. Freedom of expression doesn't mean that you have a right to an audience, especially children. Especially children. This happened to me. This was in the news. This is on my Wikipedia. I was invited to speak at the University of Calgary. Then they found out about my controversial views about Islam. A day before the event, they announced that the event has been canceled, even though I had flown to Calgary already. That got me invited to radio shows and TV interviews because I was deplatformed from a university over my controversial views. And a lot of people were telling me this is a violation of your free speech. And even though my speech was canceled, I was the one that was telling them that this is actually not a violation of my free speech. I didn't support it. I think it was the wrong move. I criticized it, but I didn't claim that it was a violation of my free speech, because free speech doesn't mean that the university has to be forced to give me a platform. The university has the right to not give me a platform. It's a bad choice, but it's not an illegal choice. Freedom of speech is about the law, and they didn't do anything illegal. So my freedom of speech was not violated, because my right to freedom of speech doesn't mean that I have a right over their audience and their platform, and they have to give me their audience and they have to give me the platform. That's not what freedom of speech is. So imagine now we're talking about schools and the importance of children's education. So you are suggesting that freedom of speech means that every school should be able to say whatever they want to children? That freedom of speech means that schools have a right to the audience of people's children? Do you know how insane that is? You have no clue what freedom of speech is, and you're here criticizing it.
And I have a question, because like I said, Sweden is amongst the topmost countries when it comes to LGBTQ rights. So when they're having their marches, is it okay for Muslims, Christians or Jews to pop up and start burning the LGBTQ flag?
So here's the fundamental thing that you don't understand. Freedom of expression is about what's legal, not what is okay. You keep switching between is it legal or is it okay? When we say these people have the freedom of expression, we're talking about the legality of it. We're not making a moral judgment, at least not at that moment. Saying they have the freedom of expression does not mean that what they're saying is being endorsed. It doesn't mean it's being judged as positive or negative. It's only the judgment that they should be allowed, legally should be allowed to say it. See how you're doing a false analogy when you compare it to, is it okay? Is it okay to burn the LGBT flag? Your question should have been, should it be legal to burn the LGBT flag? And the answer to that is yes. Yes, it should be. It should be legal. As a liberal, if somebody wants to take your right away from you to burn an LGBT flag, I, as a LGBT right advocate, I would fight for your right to burn as many LGBT flags as you want, as long as it's your LGBT flag, so you can't take someone else's. When I burn a Quran, I don't take someone else's Quran. It's my property that I paid for. As long as you do it safely in a way that doesn't harm anybody, and as long as you pay for the carbon emissions, because if you burn too many LGBT flags, that could be not very healthy to the environment. Go watch my video, Why I Burn the Quran, Armin Navabi. Go search for that. In that video, you see that I try to cover everything, any problem anybody could have with burning the Quran, including paying for the carbon footprint that my burning of the Quran was leaving behind. I paid for it and I offset it by a huge margin. If you want to disrespect an LGBT flag, I suggest doing it in safer and less harmful to the environment ways. Like you could tear it apart, you could spit on it, you could pee on it, you could do all those. Those are safer things to do.
Is it okay for Muslims, Christians, or Jews to pop up and start burning the LGBTQ flag? Because that's freedom of speech according to you folks. No? Is that transphobia?
Yeah, it is. It is. To us liberals, yeah, it is. You think you caught us? That is free speech. Go ahead. It is transphobia, but it's also free speech. You think if this is transphobic, then it means that it's not free speech? No, it's both. You're being transphobic and homophobic, and you have every right to. Go ahead. In fact, I want you to express your transphobia and your homophobia so we know how inferior your values are, how dangerous your views are, so we could demonstrate to the rest of society what big of a problem you are. Because if you weren't expressing these opinions openly, people wouldn't believe us how dangerous you are to society and to our rights and to democracy and to progress. So express away as much as you want, because people won't believe us. We want you to feel free to say them as loud as you can, so we have something to demonstrate, so people take us seriously.
Because that's freedom of speech according to you folks. No? Is that transphobia? Hey, you win some, you lose some, I guess. I didn't know. I'm not as advanced as you.
You're just making up imaginary arguments and just acting like you want them. Oh, is that homophobia, not free speech, huh? No, it's both. You win some, you lose some. No, you lose some, and then you lose some more. We keep winning the arguments because you're responding to arguments that we are not even making. He thinks that this is such a mic drop moment. When you are not responding to the actual arguments people are making, every nonsensical argument that you make is going to seem like a mic drop to yourself.
So let's move on to the guy that was actually burning the Quran, yeah? His name is Rasmus Paludan. He's the leader of the far-right political party called Hardline. Well, at least these guys can't be accused of hiding what they truly believe in. Listen to this. In August 2021, an investigation was done by Danish newspaper Ex-Shia Bladen. And this revealed that he had been talking about hardcore fetish sex with kids on a Discord server. Let me guess, Sweden. He was just exercising his freedom of speech with these kids.
You're watching. You're somebody that must be watching pornography.
Where we come from, that's messed up, mate.
This is a crime. This is not free speech. For example, inciting violence. That is illegal, not because your speech is being limited, because you're doing something else that is illegal. You're abusing children. In the same way that if somebody says, go harm Armin and I will pay you $1,000, if somebody comes arrest you for saying that, that is not a violation of your free speech. Your words were being facilitated committing another crime. You're not being arrested for just saying things. You're being arrested for attempting something that was harmful. In the same way, if you're talking about these hardcore fetish sex things with minors, you're not being arrested just because you said certain words. This is not freedom of expression because you're not just expressing opinion. You're causing harm in direct violation of other laws. If you had laws that says that these opinions cannot be expressed, that would be a law that is against free speech. But if we have laws that says that you cannot harm children or you cannot conspire to harm a certain person, then if you use your words to do those illegal activities, then stopping you is not a violation of your free speech. Another issue here is that free expression does not mean that you have a right to an audience, especially if your audience are minors and you're talking about fetish and sex. So you could have opinions about these issues, but having an audience of minors in front of you while you're talking to them about that should be illegal. Freedom of expression doesn't mean that I have a right to say my opinions about hardcore sex to children. It doesn't mean that I have a right to an audience.
But when you're from an atheistic country and you cannot prove right or wrong objectively, your moral fabric has long been burnt away. So it's only fitting that you show the world physically how you have morally declined and disgrace your country in front of the world. And another vital point that this highlights is the Quran is the only ancient holy book that if it's burnt, removed from every home on this planet, the Quran is the only ancient book that can be reproduced word for word, because it's the only book that has been mass memorized, and that is only one way that it has been preserved.
Then what's your problem? Then let them burn it. Why are you so upset about it? Then why are you so butthurt? So then chill out. Then chill the F out. There's nothing going to happen to it. So what's wrong with people burning it? Let them do whatever the hell they want. Why are you so concerned? Make sure you hit the bell notification, because if you just hit the subscribe button, you're not going to see when we're going to go live. YouTube will not tell you that we're live if you just hit the subscribe button. So you also need to hit the bell notification for YouTube to notify you that we're going live. And also make sure you like the video. Thank you. Liking the video helps the channel grow. Leave a comment, that helps the channel grow. I've been your host, Armin Navabi, and this has been the Secular Jihadists. See you in the next video.